This season in the Premier League, they've had a very, very big problem, and this big problem is that there have been a few points deductions for certain teams, and this has come after teams have allegedly been found of breaching financial fair play rules, and there has been a bit of controversy to do with this because some fans don't think that their clubs have actually really breached FFP, which, let's be honest, the club's fans aren't going to think that. So there's been a bit of a problem with the fans going on saying that the Premier League don't know what they're doing and everything, but I think it's quite rich of them to say that. However, back to the topic, teams have been found of breaching financial fair play rules, and this has ended up in certain teams getting points deductions, and then other teams are now under investigation, and I'm not sure if they're going through all of the teams to see if this has happened, because it seems like team after team after team are kind of getting accused of this. So firstly, it was Everton who ended up getting a massive 10-point deduction earlier on in the season, and after their appeal this was moved down to just a 6-point deduction. Then it was over to Nottingham Forest, who were given a 4-point deduction, and I'm pretty sure that Forest have appealed their decision, but at the time of recording this video, there hasn't been a conclusion that's come to that, so that is still under appeal. And then there's also the big one with Manchester City, who are now under investigation for 115 charges, I think from the year 2009 to 2018, of breaching FFP. And just as a little quick side note, that one is probably going to take years to actually conclude, because 115 charges, one charge can take several months, so yeah, that's probably going to take a while. But however, I have seen teams like Aston Villa, Man United and even Liverpool mentioned in this kind of thing, so this is becoming more and more of a problem because more teams are being thrown into this. However, I don't think that a lot of those teams, a few of the teams that I just mentioned, have had any real serious allegations against them for this, so nothing will probably go of that. However, this has come to the idea of a luxury tax being brought up, and I do find this to be a very, very interesting idea personally, because me watching the NBA, I've seen the luxury tax in that sport as well. So going into what is a luxury tax, so this is basically where a salary cap is implemented for the league. So each team can only spend a certain amount of money on player wages. So it's not to do with you can only spend a certain amount of money buying players, it's a certain amount that you can spend on the players' wages each season. And this salary cap can go up and down each season, and it depends on the revenue of the league. So if the league generates more revenue, then the salary cap goes up, and if the league generates less revenue, the salary cap will go down. So obviously that does change from season to season. And then what happens is teams can go over this salary cap. It's not illegal to go over the salary cap. They won't have to sell players to do that. However, if a team does go over the salary cap, they then have to pay a fine, and these fines work where if you go 5 million over the salary cap, you have to pay a certain amount in a fine, and then up to 10, 20, 25, it just keeps going up. So the more you go over the salary cap, the higher the fine is that you have to pay. And I'll probably put on screen the salary cap table for the NBA, just so you can see how this works and how much it goes up. And I do need to preface this probably wouldn't work in the same way that the NBA's does, because it is a different league and these leagues are kind of run differently in their different sports. So this is just to show you how it works in another sport. It will probably be implemented in a similar way, but not in the exact same way. So now that I've explained what a luxury tax is, let's go on to the bad and the good that at least I could think of about this. So let's just get the worst one out of the way. The bad would be that this would probably end up taking away certain punishments for clubs if they do breach financial rules. So for example, it would probably take away points deductions, and let's just say Man City were to get automatically relegated because their 115 charges go through. It would take away relegation, and it would most likely take away clubs being stripped of titles that they won whilst breaching financial rules, which I do see that being a problem, because if a team breaches financial rules and they have won a lot of titles, then they can't be stripped of them, and it still goes down in their history when really they don't deserve it because they cheated. However, it would be up to the Premier League to actually strip those punishments, shall we say. So they could keep those punishments, but then is there really much point in the actual luxury tax at that point? Because you're allowing teams to go over the salary cap, they just have to pay a fine. And then going on to the next point, the richer teams would be able to afford to go over the salary cap more. And I've thought about this quite a bit, because if you think about teams like Man City and Man United and Chelsea, they could go over the salary cap really however much they wanted. So yeah, this could be seen as a disadvantage, because lower teams who might be able to afford to pay players a bit more might not be able to afford the fine, so then they might have to let players go, for example, to lower their wages, and then they might get relegated because of that, which then leads to them losing more money by not playing in the Premier League. Even though they can afford to pay the players, they just might not be able to pay. They just might not be able to afford to pay the fine. Once again, that really depends on how much the fines would be as well. So then there could just be a point where nothing really changes because of how much money the top teams have and how much money the kind of lower teams have. So as I said, nothing much might really change. The teams like Man City, Man United might just pay the fine once they go over the luxury tax. And then what do you do then? Because you've put in a solution where nothing is really changing and it's just like it is before. So that would be a big problem, because the whole point of the luxury tax is to really kind of deter teams from going over the salary cap that you've implemented. So if nothing changes, then it was really pointless in the first place. And I think really one of the big things that would be bad about this is it would take time to get right, because what you need to realise is this would be something different that the Premier League will have implemented. And doing something like this, it would take a few years to actually get it right, because the fines might be too little for the teams, and then the fines might then go up to being too high for the teams. But then again, once again, it depends what the Premier League is trying to do. So I do not think the fans would like this one bit to start with as well, because as I said, it would take the Premier League quite a while to get this right, because it is a new thing for them. So now going on to the good aspects of this. The first one is it could deter certain teams from spending too much, because obviously owners like their profits, and clubs like Man City, their owners will want some sort of profit from it. So this could be a good deterrent from teams spending too much money on player wages, and then that would deter the owners from spending too much money. That is if this is implemented if this is implemented well, and the punishments, the fines for going over the salary cap are balanced, shall we say. And then obviously owners want to make more money, so paying the fines would not be in their best interest, like I sort of just mentioned. And then this, if implemented well, this could make the actual league more competitive. It won't make it more competitive where there's like 10 teams that could win the league, or like 8 teams that could win the league each year. However, it could make it more competitive where it's not so obvious which teams are going to go down, and there might be more of a race to stay up. And also between teams like Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, even though they all have a lot of money to spend, it could stop the big teams like Man City and Chelsea just spending so much on wages. And then it could make the title race a lot more interesting as well, because the teams would probably be a lot more balanced, and you'd have less teams like Man City. Well, you'd have teams like Man City who just aren't as stacked, because they most likely wouldn't want to pay those huge wages. And then obviously the last one could be seen as a bit of a dig, but then fans then can't complain about actually breaching financial fair play rules, which has been prevalent throughout this entire season. The teams that have got points deductions, the fans have complained quite a lot about it, so then they won't be able to complain about that, because if there's a set salary cap and you go over that salary cap and they're like, you have to pay a fine, you can't really complain about that, because it's out there and it's out in the open that if you do this, you have to pay a fine. So yeah, fans wouldn't really be able to complain as much, and that would make for less annoying headlines. So really, I think in conclusion, all of this depends on how this would be implemented. This could go very, very well, and I think it could make the league more competitive if implemented well for the 50th time. However, if it isn't implemented very well, nothing much will really change, and it will probably just make the gap between the top 6 and the rest of the Premier League even wider. So yeah, that's my opinion on a luxury tax being implemented into football, or mainly into the Premier League. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it is a bad idea? Also, leave a like on this video, and if you leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel. Well, at least try to bring out videos every week. And yeah, so thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video.